Five. Oh, we're live. Sorry.
Welcome. Kicking it with Coach K podcast. This is episode 39. Are we at 39 or 40?
38.
38, episode 38. I apologize for that. This show is brought to you by Brain Jerk and Kennedy Health and Wellness. Welcome to the Brain Jerk era. These guys, as you know, are growing the podcast network. They've got events coming up. They've got adult entertainment, guys. We've also got our coaching clinic coming up, which is sponsored by these guys. So I'm going to talk about that again here in a second, but just want to give them love. Also, make sure you check out our new Pillar Talk show. So Josh and I, we're doing Pillar Talk now on Wednesdays. Pillar Talk Reloaded this week. We have it's Tom Gerwak on, I believe, on Wednesday, right, Josh? So you guys might remember him from Lotus Ginkgo, the old TV show on the Monroe Channel. He's also from Gerwak Photography, so we're excited to have him in that day. Kennedy Health and Wellness is your one-stop shop. Everything wellness from body care to candles. Guys, I'm just going to make this quick, but we got a new office set up right over here with our guys at Brain Jerk. What that means in a nutshell is it means you can order online from us now, and you can come right up here and pick it up, and it's free of charge. So you don't got to pay for shipping no more or that delivery fee or nothing. So that makes your orders not just quicker to get them, but it also makes them obviously a bit more affordable in times like today. We all are trying to find, something more affordable. So I just touched on this, but our coaching clinic is coming up on February 10th. Make sure you get your tickets. This is at Cilantro Off the Rails in Dundee. This is for any sport, any level, any coach. This is just something that we're doing to kind of touch on how to coach our kids, how to recruit the hallways, how to fundraise, how to do different things that all coaches can take from. I've talked about this on the past in the podcast, but Coach Corey Parker over at Toledo, shout out. He's going to be there. Coach Harris over at Harper Woods, shout out. No disrespect, fellas. No disrespect. No, I just want to put that out there. But he's a friend of mine. So, and then, Coach, we actually added Coach Brooke Martin over at Allen Park Volleyball. So shout out to Coach Martin. She'll be in the house. And then I'm going to announce our next two speakers this week. So make sure you stay tuned on social media. This show is sponsored by several businesses in our community. The reason I feel the need to give them love every single week is not just because of what they do for the show or the community economically, but also what they do for our kids. A lot of these businesses, they've either done stuff for either hosted stuff there or had, we do like a lifter of the month. They've given out gift cards, different things of that nature. So Amaya's Fresh Mexican Grill, the Little Brown Jug, Lane's Pizzeria, IWR, All Heart Athletics, Monroe County Sports Network. Shout out to them for also being sponsors of the coaching clinic. 1817 CrossFit, Big Back Prep, 8 Mile Vodka, Backroad Baggers, Smoker Society, Spooky Films, Nerdy Designs, and Just Drive with Jess. All right, our quote of the day is by Tom Landry. Leadership is a matter of having people look at you and gain confidence. If you're in control, they're in control. So for me, I always try to pick a quote that relates to who we have on, right? For me, from an outside view, just playing you guys in 2020, I live 5 minutes down the road from airport, actually. And just kind of that view of going to a couple games here and there in the playoffs and different things. You can kind of see it, right? It doesn't take long to see what a culture is, what you're doing wherever you're at, that culture word, right? But it's the things you do. It's how people interact with each other. And you can see that super quick with you guys. And that's what that quote is, right? If you guys are in control, but the kids feel they're on that kind of that same, right, kids-led programs, right, players-led programs. Those are the programs that really flourish. And I think that's how, an outside view, that's kind of how it feels like you guys have accomplished that. I've coached Cooper at a couple camps and different things, and just hearing guys, man, and then the All-Star game we were just talking about, and you just kind of, you see it and you hear it enough to where you go, all right, there's something to that, man. They do things the right way. So that's why we chose that quote. So guys, we before we jump in and kind of get to some different topics, just for the listeners, want to say again, I coached against you guys in 2020. We took a loss in that game, but great football game. We actually had a kid, I don't know if you remember the kick returner, Troy, track kid, did great, but I had nothing but respect for you guys, man. That was like our kids, if I'm being real, when you are at a place like Romulus and you go certain places, the kids expect certain things. And I won't dive too deep into that, but there was none of that day. There was nothing but just football, man. Respect, hard playing football. And so my first impression of you guys actually being across from the sideline of you, Great stuff, man. You guys do a great job. Did a great job. So tell us, man, we always start with just real basic. Tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Oh, I mean, I recently, as far as a couple of weeks ago, I'm no longer coaching at the moment. I was able to step down for the time being as far as being involved with my kids. I have 3 daughters, 2 of which are very heavy into athletics and other extracurriculars, to where I was starting to miss their things for my things. And
that makes sense.
I can't do that. I'll miss it. I really enjoyed it, every minute of it. Whether it was as an assistant coach or as a head coach, enjoyed it. I've enjoyed a lot of reminiscing and talking about some of the things that we were able to, some struggles we had, and some things that we were able to accomplish in the 7 years that I was the head coach. So it's been a lot of fun. The last couple of weeks, being able to sit back and talk to some people about that, and some proud moments through it.
Out of curiosity, and not to put you on the spot here, but how old are you, Coach?
Just turned 40.
Okay, so you're a relatively young guy then.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So that's literally just moving on, doing the family thing.
Yeah,
timing.
Timing had worked
Love
out with
it, man.
everything, and that's priorities.
And I'm sure, as a football coach, I'm sure maybe you're not full time, but I'm sure you might pop in here and there and see how things are going, and say hello and those different things.
I mean, I member of the community still, right? Like, I there's not going to be a bigger fan of, especially Airport's football program than myself. But I love high school football in general. So, Friday nights will be different, but at the same time, I will be excited to experience it from an angle that I haven't experienced it from anywhere but the sideline in like 17 years.
I was going to say, between playing and coaching, you probably don't even remember the last football game you got to enjoy.
Yeah, it's well known, as far as with my staff and my friends of mine, that once we get knocked out, I don't go. I'm not a good loser.
Okay,
I own it. That is just, it's how I am. I will not go. So I haven't watched a lot of games in a non-scouting capacity. Gotcha. So it'll be interesting to be able to just watch one and not have to game plan for it.
Right, and have all the X's and O's.
Just enjoy it.
Yeah, you might still find yourself here and there being like, you should run this. You should, I feel like it would be hard, man, as a football coach. I feel like there'd still be those moments, but it's awesome because you deserve it, man. You put in a lot of work, did a lot. And I think as people, you have different stages in life. And some stages are grind hard in this job or this place, or, build this or do that. And I think for you as a man, for us, it's important to recognize those moments and those times when it's time to shift into that stage of life. So I respect the hell out of you for that, because I'll be real, a lot of coaches and people can't actually move forward in the stages they're supposed to, if we're being real, and they get stuck, or they do something for a long time that they're not actually supposed to do, right? Mm-hmm. And then instead of looking back, you're not going to look back now, say, damn, I missed this. You're going to look back and say, man, I had a great run, and now I'm getting to enjoy my kids. Like, that's cool, man. I respect it. Do you, out of curiosity, have any plans potentially doing it down the road?
It's funny because the people probably most disappointed that I'm not doing it are my own kids. Right?
Really?
That they, whether they're at practices or on the sidelines or doing, it was part of an experience for them too.
I love that. Great message.
So that was probably the toughest thing, when they said, no, you're not doing it. But I was like, guys, I'm not going to be able to be at your things. So, I mean, by the time they're both out of school, I feel like I'd still be young enough to hop back in with somebody and help out somewhere. It is something that I would welcome down the road, just not anytime.
Definitely. That's kind of why I asked him, like 40. I'm like, your kids could be, grown, and you could still do this thing. That's young enough to where you could still potentially have that stage. That's awesome though. What about you, my man? Tell us about yourself.
Tim Duffy, Coach Red. I was fortunate enough to coach with my brother for the last 7 years as his offensive coordinator. I'm also taking a step back, similar to Jim, as far as I got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, getting more active every day. And I also changed careers right before the 2020 season in September of that year. So I got lucky that he was willing to push practices back till 4 p.m. So we didn't start till 4 every day, because I'm in sales. And,
Right.
I couldn't leave my job early. I had work to do. So I got lucky in that capacity as far as everybody on staff was on board to kind of bend, because not everybody were teachers on staff. And so we all kind of worked together, and kids got a little break in between school and practice, did what they had to do. Some days we left, some days we took advantage of that, watching film, whatnot. But so, yeah, I called the offense for the last 7 years. I'll say this, I'll be around in some capacity, whether it's the junior jets, watching, junior high, whatever I can do to help the program. Like he said, we're very big supporters of it. I've played in it, coached in it, grew up in it. So won't go far, but obviously we'll take a step back as far as what role I had last season.
Definitely. It's but again, same to you, same with the same credit for just understanding the stages in life, man, and going forward. So as we before we move on with kind of the future stuff, we talked about this earlier. You guys are super close with the kids. Did you guys have, as what I understand, both of you played at Airport, right? Did you guys have close relationships with your coaches at Airport?
Oh yeah, that's in every sport that I played. We had a really, I shouldn't say just at that particular time. I think that our communities had a knack for having people in, especially head varsity positions, that they're local people. They had ties to the school. It matters to them. They do a good job as far as mentors and setting examples. And I mean, I went to school, and when I was in college, I went to school and I said, I'm going to be a teacher because I wanted to coach, because the guys that were that meant the most to me, or people I should say at that time, were people that they were teachers and coaches. And I said, well, that's what, not for me, quick plug. I sell real estate. So anybody out there, I noticed all them sponsors before here. I mean, I don't know how Josh ain't hit me up for a sponsorship yet, so I can at least get like a picture or something in here. I didn't end up teaching, but that is why, because a lot of my teachers and coaches were people that I really enjoyed spending time with.
And that's one of the things that literally drove you to coach.
Oh, absolutely.
I love that, man.
Yeah.
Be who you needed when you were younger. Love that.
I got lucky. As a younger brother, I'm 5 years younger than Jim. He let me kind of be around for the whole deal. I was the ball boy in football, just kind of tagged along with him and his guys, and even his coaches let me be around. So I got so fortunate to be around Coach Redmond, Coach Cone, Coach Jones, Coach Marlowe, Coach Mossberg. My bad. I got the chance to be around so many great people from a young age that it was I've always wanted to coach because of those guys. And the coolest part is that I've kind of built friendships with them later in life. As a young kid, it was always, they're still a coach to me, but now, it's cool to have had those mentors growing up, but to still have relationships with them in a different capacity now.
I think as a coach, that's actually one of the coolest parts, is like, so we have that with our coaches that we had, but then like our kids, like, so I'm still relatively young in coaching and young in life, but but even in, 7, 8 years in now, like I have kids that I coached my second, third, fourth year that, they reach out and they've been in the military or doing this or running a business. And you're like, wow, you're like, man, the coach that, I still text is now I'm that for this guy. And like, that's a very fulfilling, feeling as a coach. That's like, that beats, and I hate to say it because we're all result oriented as coaches. We all want to win, but that beats anything on a scoreboard that you'll ever feel for real. Is just that feeling of that text, that's like, damn, I'm for that guy what I needed and what my coach was. But no, that's awesome. Out of curiosity, like where was Airport when you guys took over? Because I'll be real, I'm not 100% familiar.
So he's like a football historian school wise, because he was there, like he said, when he was young. A couple of proud moments as far as way back as a player. When I was a sophomore, 1998, we won the Huron League championship for the first time in school history. So it was 50 years in between league titles, right? That was, I think, Coach Redmond's third year or fourth year. Third year. From that point, the next year we qualified for the playoffs the first time ever. And then he made the playoffs like 15 straight years, which it went from a program that hadn't had very much success to, it was a staple of success for, a decade and a half. When Coach moved on. They had some years where they weren't quite as competitive. The couple of years right before I came in, they participation had like at every school had
Stuff that goes
had
goes
gone
on
down a
in
little
schools,
bit.
right? Yep.
So, and I was actually up until that point, the 8 years prior to that, I was coaching against them. I was an assistant for Jack Jarmo for 8 years at Catholic Central.
Really?
So I was a
Okay.
trader. I was not. I wasn't. I wasn't everybody's favorite at that time for sure. So yeah, a couple of years before weren't as competitive, but it was certainly a goal when we came into.
Right.
Not necessarily. I don't think like a lot of things that you can replicate some things that happened back when, because I think the parity is so good now between schools.
Right. Yep.
You just don't see schools anymore that are like you just dominate every single year. Our league in particular is
it's
strong, and there are some good programs in it. And
wow, it's
like,
good.
There's teams every year that like if you don't play well, you're not going to win.
Right.
And it becomes a little bit more difficult to stay competitive.
And for the listeners, like that whole little like couple year stretch where it's up and down or here, like that's common. Like that's high school football to be and I used to hate coaching against this team, but to be a Riverview, to be even what you guys have built to be a consistent winner is something that I don't think a lot of people realize. It's really freaking hard, man. It is extreme to be consistent, not to hit on that senior class of 14, 15 kids, but to be good every year. Even your guys as younger seasons when you guys were coming up with this class, to still have 7-win seasons in those different, that is hard, man, with a bunch of young guys. Like that is difficult to do. You know what I mean? And I don't think people actually understand how hard that is, and how, like, if you look at probably, and I'm guessing here, but you look at 80% of high schools and you look at their records the last 10, 20 years, I bet you a lot of it is either like this down, or I bet you a lot of it's like this. There's those very few, in our county, it's the Whitefords right now. Yep. It's you guys that have been successful and started to build a nice run in the schools we talked about. But like, that's so hard, man. It's so difficult.
And I'll talk a little bit about the program. From Coach Redmond's last season was 2009. We had then Jim was the fourth coach after Coach Red left. And while success came and went during that span, 6-7 seasons, the one thing I'll say is the culture of the program had always maintained to some degree.
Okay.
All the coaches were great in their own way. And like you said, it is so hard to keep that, that level of, just winning season after winning season. So there were definitely a couple tough years in there, but as far as who was around, they still did a great job. Kids were, participation might've been down, but that could have been across the board as far as the sport goes,
right?
Not just our program in general. So it was, we had a difficult job to do our first couple of years as far as changing some of the things to win football games. But as far as the kids, they were great kids before we got there. You know what I mean? We inherited a great group of kids that were well coached prior to, wasn't like.
So you guys are just putting your own kind of spice on things and trying to elevate it,
That's what it is. Every coach, right. And even I was talking to the defensive coordinator the last couple of years, who was his teammate, Derek Anderson.
Yep. Shout out to Coach Anderson.
Shout out to Coach DA. We were talking today about how lucky we were as the OC and DC that our head coach just said, that's yours, do your thing. Because you got to put your own flavor on it, knowing that, hey, if we were going to punt, it was going to come from him. He was going to tell me if we're going to go or we're going to punt.
Right.
But at the end of the day, other than that.
But if we're going, tell me what we're doing.
Exactly. He told me.
I respect that, though.
He would tell me to have a play ready. But as far as he made the decisions, but he gave us the freedom to really put our own spin on things. So that was super helpful.
I love that, though. That's that elevate everybody, man. Elevate the kids, elevate the staff, elevate the position coaches. As a defensive coordinator, so last year was my first year, and I tried to, and I'll always move this way, but I tried to make sure that whatever I did, the position coaches understood why. I took in what do you think? Do you think we should do something different? Does this work? We need to have these productive conversations to figure it out. And man, you get so not only so much more out of it progression wise with your kids and like the X's and O's in the team, but as a friendship, like you get a lot out of it, or even just as a brother relationship, you get a lot, man, because it's like, oh, and as a head coach, I'll be honest, you gain a lot of respect. Like I've only been an assistant and a coordinator. That's kind of I like being a coordinator, but I'll be honest, like the head coaches that you work for that operate like that, those are the guys that you want to work for, because those are the guys where things can be talked about. It's comfortable. We can get work done. We can get things done, and I respect that. It's hard because I've been with both. I've been with a coach that I was like, why am I here? Like, why am I coaching here right now?
And it's a progression, because like that was something I mean. I've told my coaches this. I've told kids this. When I got the job, of course, immediately I had all sorts of ideas, and this was going to work because I thought it was going to work. But just like in anything, like there's a growing up period, and that growing up period is learning how to delegate. That was very difficult for me early on, as far as saying, hey, I'm going to allow this person to do this and have the trust in them to be able to do this. Partly because I hadn't forged the relationships with my coaches that I have now. Some of them I knew from the time I was in school. Some of them I knew just from growing up around them, but I didn't know them as football coaches. And the more comfortable I got with them, and the more comfortable I got with some of the guys that I was able to bring in from either places I had coached previous or just guys that I knew, for me, and I'm sure it doesn't work for everybody, because I would have people say that at times, like, you don't call an offense or a defense, like, what do you do? And I'm like, first of all, I am probably the most proud person ever about special teams. Like that was my baby. That was what I loved it. And that was one of my things where I was like, hey, it gives me, like, I'm going to make sure that I have my fingerprints all over this. But at the same time, I'm an advocate for sometimes the smartest person in the room is the person that knows he's not the smartest person in the room.
Big message.
So when he can call an offense better than me. And as a big brother, that's difficult sometimes to utter, but at the same time, it is absolutely true. And Derek, coming in as far as defensively was huge for us. And it was one of those things too. Derek, it was a head coach, right? Before he came and did that. And there's not a lot of people that can do that can be a head coach and then step into an assistant's role. But I think that we gelled very well because of, I told him, I'm not going to step on your toes as far as what you want to call, what you want to run, do it, because I trust you. And I wouldn't want to put somebody in that position that I didn't trust that was going to make it better. So, but I've been on both sides as an assistant, as a coordinator, as a position coach, and as a head coach. And I'm comfortable at any of them. I feel like I could be an assistant coach tomorrow and be, valuable to somebody. I won't be, but I mean, tomorrow anyway. But like being a head coach wasn't, to me, it wasn't a status thing as far as you had to do a certain thing. It was, how can you put a system together that is going to help the kids be successful?
That's incredible, because that's the message is that's a no ego. Like, yes, this is a person that operates on zero ego, right? Because that's like, as coaches, I find a lot of coaches, we do have egos, and we do kind of like, there's a lot of coaches that are control freaks, to be honest, like huge control freaks. And then, like, I'm blessed right now to have to be coaching with Coach Bowers, because like defensively, it's the same thing. Like, he's like, hey man, make sure it makes sense and have answers, right? Just have solutions to problems. And that's kind of how we approach it. And we have productive conversations from there. But I
will tell you, I not that I'm not sitting here saying that, the way I do it is the only way. Like, there are guys that are control freaks that are really good at everything they're controlling, and that's how they have to do it. Like, there's not a right or a wrong way. It's like
one just retired.
Yeah.
The GOAT, Nick Saban, just retired. And if you don't think Nick Saban's one of those guys, shit.
Yeah, there's no correct way. It's whatever works, right? At the end of the day.
We got super lucky. So from year 1 to year 7, the staff had there were a couple people that stayed the same, but people had come and gone they weren't in education, different jobs, families grew. So, I mean, we revamped the staff, and I say we because we bounced so many things off of each other. There were times we'd call each other and just throw out names of people that, hey, let's call so and so, let's do this. And to his credit, we got people that all had something different, that they brought to the table.
That's big.
And everybody kind of knew their role, but we also had a good time. That was the biggest thing. Is there were a couple seasons early on that, because we were scratched and clawing, learning, taking our lumps as far as even coaches go, that weren't as fun as the last couple of years. And of course, everybody can say, well, you were winning games. Yeah, that made it a little nicer. But I mean,
But it's not everything.
camaraderie, our talks in the coach's office before, after games, practices, very rarely were about football. We talked about everything. So very cool to coach with a group of guys over 7 years, some that have come and gone, that call friends and will stay in contact with forever. So
that's amazing, man. And see, that's what people don't understand listening, is like that all ties together, because the last few years, yeah, it felt better because you were winning, but also the winning happened because of the camaraderie. It was built and the maturity happened.
Yep.
Like that's part of the build process, right? Like we just saw it with, I'm a big Michigan fan. So we just saw it kind of with these guys, where it's like that was a knocking on the door for a couple years now, and just kind of inching, building, getting closer. And then you hear about from that team, regardless of all the garbage stuff off the field, but all you hear about them is they're together. And that is a team, right? And the coaches love each other, and the coaches love the kids, and like that's the same thing. Out of curiosity, so you said you coached SEC.
Yes.
So how did you end up convincing Airport? How did that go down? Just because you went there, or like,
to hire me?
Yeah, how
he was the AD. It was no. Like, I mean, first of all, yes,
I was hoping he wouldn't apply.
Yeah. So first,
not to apply.
First of all, he was the athletic director. And whether that seems like nepotism or not, I will say he removed himself from the interview and panel process and everything.
That's fair.
I mean, at the same time, though, you have a panel at a school like Airport, right? I knew everyone on the panel.
Right.
Either they were teachers of mine, or administrators, or coaches, or people I graduated like around. So like I was going to be very comfortable in the room talking to everybody. And, I mean, I believe, and you guys might have a different opinion here as I sit on this couch, I believe I'm a good interview. So sitting down, as far as applying for a job, I'm comfortable as far as talking with everybody. I don't think there's any ill will about it. Everybody would give me a hard time and joke about it, but I was still the same guy. I wasn't turned in any way all of a sudden. But and again, I have friends that I made over there on the staff that I coached with over there for years and years and years, and learned so much. I mean, that was what prepared me to be able to do it, was the guys that I coached with over there. I coached him for Jack for 8 years, and
that had to be something.
I coached with Randy Wyndham for a number of years over there. He's been like family to me since I was young kid, and I was able to coach his son all the way up. And my brother-in-law was in that same couple classes there. So I had those guys all the way up and through. I coached multiple sports over there. So it was, I made a lot of good friendships over there that, I still cherish to this day. But it was, I joke about the trader part. They weren't happy about it, but it was, when I came back, nobody gave me a hard time.
Obviously the hire worked out right. It worked out well.
Yeah. Well, he married into a CC family, and she runs the show.
You're
so
welcome. I made him look good.
Said thank you.
Yeah, something like that. No, it was tough early on. I'm not gonna lie. Once the decision by the panel was made, I laughed.
Did you take some heat? Sorry for interrupting.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, but we've taken heat since we were in school, and I mean, I always got things because of him. We always got things because of our grandpa or whatever else. So that comes with the territory. I would like to say that there were a couple hires that at the school at that time, I hired a basketball coach the same year as him, who was, phenomenal, who's really now good, coaching at the Division II level at Pfeiffer. And, both of those were kind of things that I said, I took like the GM approach after the hires were made. I talked to him and he asked me, like he said, he didn't know a ton about our staff. So, he asked me, he bounced a lot of things off me. What do you think so-and-so can do? What level do you think they fall in? And things like that. So we worked together. I mean, that's just, it was fun, but it was difficult at times.
Yeah.
We were competitive, not against each other, but with each other. We wanted to win. And when things weren't going well, but I think it was what ended up leading to finally having some success on top of having great kids, a great staff, was just that, he's a little tougher than I am. I'm, a little bit more schematic than he is. So I think,
Okay. So that meshes well.
for sure.
That works out well.
And there were times I needed his, no,
Yeah.
like, let's go, man up and get something ready to go.
Yep. Yep.
So
I love it, man.
Yeah,
And
it was
there's times and vice versa. There's times where he needed, your opinion and your insight
sure.
too.
sure.
You guys had a great run, man, especially these last few. I tell you, I'm a big proponent of and we're trying to build over at Erie Mason, right? We're in the early stages of trying to build, and it's I love watching stuff like that. I just love watching teams slowly get there, because we live in a society where not just from a football standpoint is this
instant
awesome,
gratification,
but we do, and you guys are a great example of just calm down and work at shit, because it'll work out. You don't got to quit at it. You don't got to walk away. You don't got to step, just keep figuring answers out and keep getting better.
The hard part is that while we're learning, while we're trying to get better, there's kids that's their last year. So I look back and we talk a lot about our first 2 years, and we did some nice things, but we also had some kids that probably wouldn't look back on those 2 years with oh, those are the best 2 years of our lives. But we also have a lot of great relationships from those 2 seasons. You talked earlier about that. I just played basketball this morning with the quarterback from our first team.
Oh, I love it, man.
A kid who thought he was a quarterback, but I told him if he played guard, he'd be all league. And he ended up being all league. So great relationships. But at the same time, I do look back and say, I wish we would have known then what we know now, type of deal. I wish we would have started the transformation offensively earlier. But to be honest, that couldn't have happened until the right kid came in to run quarterback. I mean, when you're that age and you're playing 3 sports and you're doing your thing and have a social life, it's tough to give as much time to make drastic changes in a program like that. And if it weren't for the group of kids that came through and, gave up so much of their time, we wouldn't have been. I mean, the kids were awesome.
Yeah, most definitely, man. I think, that's one of the old sayings, right? Is coaches lose games, players win them. I've always believed that. I'm when you win, man, you just sit there on a sideline on Friday and you just we call plays and we call defensive fronts and stuff, but it's that guy that's got to go do it, line up right, do the stunt right, make the play, catch the ball, run the right route, whatever it is,
Sure.
It's awesome to see. Do you guys, out of curiosity, so do you guys know Wiley, Coach Wiley?
Jefferson.
Cody?
Oh, Cody. Yeah.
You guys know Coach
Yeah, Cody
Wiley?
was 2 years older than me in school, so he was a senior when I was a sophomore. Played center for us. Yeah.
Shout out.
Wiley.
He coaches with me over at Mason, and I thought he said he went to Airport and coached at Airport for a year or something with Redmond. So I just wanted to. I know he's at Monroe for a while.
Yeah, and I think he also was at Ida for a minute when Coach Redmond was helping.
Maybe it was
Wally
Ida.
over there.
Yeah, maybe it was Ida.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just wondered if him and I think we got another friend in common. I think Henry Jones. You guys know Henry?
Yep.
Hank.
Yep, Hank. Yep. So shout out to those guys, man.
Sure.
Friends in common. So we touched on some of this earlier, and you guys have kind of talked about it. But what's just a memorable moment or two from this past couple of years, man? Give me that one moment.
Oh my.
Oh, that is a good
Oh,
one.
wait a minute. Perfect timing too.
Yeah.
Perfect timing.
Yeah, so
That's pretty sweet.
I will tell you this was one that I mean these guys generated plenty of moments for you to be proud of.
Definitely.
You talk about individual vindication type stories. We played at Catholic Central when Coop was a sophomore. And granted, again, had a lot of sophomores that year. And
Yeah,
Coop,
you guys were super young.
Coop was big already, right? He was 6'3" and well put together, and he'd already played varsity football for a couple of years. And it was a close game. We had the ball inside the 5 with a chance to go up late in the 4th, and credit to them, they defensively made some nice plays in space when they needed to in order to do it. But you know how kids are, and unfortunately for this time, there were some adults that the one thing I don't like is adults talking about kids in a negative light at all. Coaches, just people in general. I don't think that it's appropriate. I don't like it. And there were some people who had some things to say about Cooper making some business decisions to get out of bounds when he might have gotten hit. And he can vouch for this because this was one of a couple of touchdowns that he ran there this year. And I'm on the headset yelling, I don't hear anybody talking about him getting out of bounds now. They didn't care that he was 15 years old, and that, and that you had
the week before we were at Flat Rock, his sophomore year, he threw 4 touchdowns, I believe, that week. And it was a close game early on, like 7-7. Nolan Zajac picks the ball off like on the goal line. They were about to score and, move the chains, end up going and scoring, make it 14-7, spread it out after the half. But that was the first week, sophomore. I think it was week 2 of the season, and they tell me he needs to play defense. And I'm going to be mad. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely, man. If he needs to play, help us win, I'm all for it. So Coop runs on the field defensively as a sophomore that second week, and he's got gloves on his hands. And I'm like, oh man, this dude's ready to play. Well, about four plays in, he's got his arm up and his shoulder like gotten dislocated, and so came out. They popped it back in.
Yeah.
Luckily, it was his non-throwing shoulder. But like the next week is when all the business decisions were made.
Getting out of bounds.
So
he just popped his shoulder out of socket the week before.
But talk about a kid who never said a word, never
Cooper's one of the toughest, greatest kids ever, man. I've met him a couple times, but I coached him at a camp, and it was actually right after all the COVID craziness.
Yeah,
but I'm telling you, nobody worked harder.
No.
For people to even say that, I'm like, and to be honest, even if the quarterback does make that decision, we need him the next play.
Yeah,
quarterbacks don't come, 2s and 3s and 4s on a roster.
Yeah.
So but
I will tell you, for all the moments the last couple of years with this group, some of my favorite moments are from the group that graduated, or the 19 football season, which would have been my 3rd year. It was the first year that we made the playoffs. For when I was there anyway. And we had a group of kids that they got a lot better in a couple of years. And we actually had 2 opportunities that year, and whatever, you can point it on me and say it's my fault. I would do it again today. I'd do it again tomorrow. It doesn't matter. We had 2 opportunities, one against Riverview. We were down 14. We were down 14-0 with about 4 minutes left in the game. We scored twice. And scored the second one with just over a minute left. Went for 2, came up about a foot short. And then flash forward, we get into the playoffs. We had lost our quarterback in week 7 to a broken hand, and had Cole V was playing quarterback, and learned basically he's just our best football player. And he just went there and played. Went there and played it for a couple weeks. We're at Milan, same thing, down 14-7. We have a 13 or 14 play drive in the 4th quarter to get down and score with under 2 minutes to go. Went for 2 for the win. They were 10-0. We were playing on the road. And I think between those 2 losses that year, we were 2 feet short from having some pretty cool things. But those are the bounces that don't go your way that build. Even though we'd rather won the game, when you finally start to break through and do some things, you respect those moments a lot more, because it took a lot to just put yourself in the position to be able to go for it.
Yeah, I love that, man. And no, look back at it, you don't ever regret, man. And especially as a coach, there's a certain amount of confidence in those situations that your team just gets. So speaking, to continue with what you were saying, you don't even know the younger kids that could have, we don't know how many younger kids that could have been damn, our coach really, he really messes with us, bro, when it comes to believing in us. Like, he really thinks we about to win any moment, anytime.
The first game that I was ever the head coach for, right? So I opened up 2017, my first game as a head coach ever. We're playing Dundee at our place and could not stop them to say
Ben Miller ran for like 400 yards.
Ben Miller's still running for
running.
touchdowns right now. But
Been a part of those games
we get
too,
to the
fellas.
point where we are down 35 to 29 we got the ball on the 10, like our own 10.
It was like 3 or 4.
It might have been.
We had a goal line stop right before.
Yeah, so we
got it.
stopped them
Okay.
on the goal line. We got it back with less than a minute to go. We went the length of the field, scored with no time on the clock, and then went for 2 and got it. And we won the game.
Man.
And one of the coolest things about like the progression of everything is if you watch the video of it today, now the kid that scored that 2-point conversion, the guy he was talking about playing basketball with earlier today, there's a ball boy on the sideline who like the camera pans to everybody storming the field, and this little ball boy on the sideline like puts his hands up in the air and just collapses like in excitement.
It's just straight, pump.
He graduated 2 years ago and was our starting running back.
Wow.
And he runs track and plays football at Siena now. As a matter of fact,
Shout out.
Hambone.
His first touch ever. This is his first year playing football. His first college touch, scored 60-yard touchdown.
Ooh, shout out.
Yeah. So, but he was the ball boy, and then
At
the
that
progression
moment.
of coming all the way through, and then
That's-
being the guy.
He was our
life is fulfilling, man, when you
Yeah.
see that.
he played our dive back position against you in 2020. He caught a couple
Wait,
touchdown
was he
passes.
the big kid?
No,
He was the other guy. So he wore number
Okay.
2. He caught
He was number 2.
he had a little
Okay.
wiggle to him.
Yup,
yeah.
yup. You guys had another guy that was huge.
That
And
was-
he was running
yup.
all over us. I was like, good Lord, help us. This guy is something else.
We-
He was like 6'3", whoever
Yeah.
you guys had running the ball that night.
yep.
I was like, Coach, that kid is huge.
We had some great kids, great players. You know, in high school it's always tough because you feel like they're never all there at once, you know, like
Yeah.
I
Yep.
wish I had these 2 guards with this 2 tackles and that center. I mean, this year, you know, we go into the season and our center was a lefty senior and kind of like the prototypical, just a grinder, like didn't
Yep.
play much as a junior, had some chances when we had some injuries, but man, was in the weight room every day of his career, tough, didn't say much. He breaks his ankle at our scrimmage.
Oh,
So all of a sudden you go to, we're supposed to play at Carlson and end up being at Trenton with a freshman, you know,
right,
at
with
center.
somebody next man
and-
up.
And he, you know, he did his job all year, did a great job, but it's crazy.
Imagine that being a freshman, your first ever football game in high school is against Carlson on the road.
yeah.
That's
Neutral
rough.
site.
Neutral site.
I'm
like
not
you're-
gonna lie, that's tough.
and he
man.
did a great job.
Yeah.
That's tough because them boys over at Carlson, they do some work over there
Yeah.
too, man. A couple of
Yeah.
them guys in the
Oh.
All-Star game. The one kid, shout out to him, Big Red. They were calling him all week. The big tackle and then
Yeah.
that running back, man. Them guys were nuts. But
They're awesome.
today Carlson's always another one that's been pretty solid and built something up. Pretty.
As far as, you know, it's funny that all these stories keep coming back up now, though. We're at the scrimmage, and I hated the scrimmage. You know, I know a lot of coaches like it. A lot of coaches want to run it.
The preseason
I'm
four-way.
not I hate
You don't
four
like
ways.
it?
No, because at most schools you don't have a lot of depth.
Facts.
So if you do lose somebody in a game or in a day that doesn't totally
the
matter,
scrimmage.
I know you want to see people. And there were, you know, he talked about the 19 team. We left our scrimmage that year and we're like, we're going to be all right. But this year it was kind of like, we just got to stay healthy, get in, get out type of deal. So we lose that kid and the freshman's in the huddle. And so we're getting ready to run like our last series offensively. And the coolest thing is Jack Mills, who, you know, best football player in the county this year, in my opinion, you know, reaches out to give this kid some love and just says, let's go. Like there was no hiccup. There was it was just, hey, you're in, let's roll.
That's
They
belief.
loved him and took him under his wing. And the leadership of the kids who we had as freshmen, now, you know, they grew up so fast and did a great job leading the younger guys this year.
And you guys left that, man. Like you guys left that in a great place to where that's going to continue on. You know what I'm saying? That's been so embedded now over the last 7 years. And with that group, like every freshman and sophomore watches Coop, watches Jack, watches them guys, knows you guys, and that like I really feel like and you know obviously airports making some decisions on a coaching search and whatnot, and they're gonna figure out how they continue on things, and but I'm like I just feels like that's a place where and again it's like the timing like we talked about earlier. It feels like it's perfect timing because it feels like you took it to a place where it's now elevated and you took it to the next level, right? You took it or you got it back necessarily to where it, you know, the standard was.
I tell you, and it takes a lot of people to get it to that point. And I'll tell you this, I think right now, and it doesn't necessarily mean the next football season or the following, or that you have certain goals that you have to hit at certain times, but the community, as far as a couple of our staff guys are the guys that created the youth program. Derek and Justin were the guys that really got after the junior jet program that they have now. The participation at our youth level it's kind of what we always knew it would be if somebody could do it. But those guys are the ones that actually finally took the time and did it. And between you go to junior jet games on Saturday and there's 15 teams from flag through sixth grade tackle, and of the coaching staffs, I bet you there are 20 former airport football players that played between 1998 and 2011.
That's so bad.
That like they're all guys that either maybe played with me or played with him, or I remember watching shortly thereafter, that are all still involved. And so now you have a youth level. We have really great development at our junior high levels, and that the varsity and varsity and high school level in general, we have a coaching staff of guys who they take the time to develop and put kids in positions to be successful. So I'd like to think that I had, certainly a hand in it, but man, there's been a lot of people that have made it possible because of, to get it to where it is right now. Cause I agree with you. I think it's in a really good place going forward, but in order to be in this place, there was a lot of people that did a lot of work in areas that they didn't get, recognized like I did for it.
I get that for sure. Definitely. I love that you say that here though, because that's selfless, man. Like that's giving the recognition to those people that deserve it. Cause you're right. And that's the way that you build. If you really want to build a program, you build it from the ground up. And I know that's cliche and every coach at every clinic says that or whatever, but like, it's really the truth. Like get a good youth program, get people that care at every single level that are connected, and watch what happens. And that's why I feel like I'm confident in you guys over there though, because even though you guys are moving on to the next stage, there's so much involvement in the community. There's so many people that tend to be a part of the program. There's so many players that want to come back around. There's, and then there's the guys like this class. And this was my question here was, was this the best airport team ever this past season, in your opinion? But this class in general, besides just this year, I think this is the kind of class that leaves a lasting impression on a place and a coaching staff, with all due respect. But I think this is something that carries on down the road that people look to and go, look how they did it.
I'll tell you, I'm involved in the junior jets as well, in a very small role, but seeing our kids go to their games on Saturdays, our varsity guys standing on the sidelines and on the fence, and their kids at our games. I mean, last year Cooper ran a touchdown against Jefferson, and junior jets kids were right on the back of the end zone. And he reached out and you would have thought this kid just won a car, like just because Cooper dapped him up. It was like, and that was, I got chills walking out a couple of games this year, home games where they had a tunnel form with the little guys. And, that's, like I said, I was lucky enough to be brought up in it. And I think that that's the lasting impact, because it wasn't always this group that were seniors weren't always the leaders. And, they had some growing pains, the year before we had Drew and a couple other guys that really were great leaders for us that were hard on them. I would say, they were like, they need to, they're not just the guys, the young kids who make plays anymore. They need to step up as leaders. So it was super cool to see maturity each and every year step up and see that we've had so many kids go on and do great things, whether it's athletically or, educationally. We got a kid that played, he was a kicker for us, and he's pitching at Wayne State right now, and he's about to set every career Wayne State baseball pitching record. Cole V, who, like he talked about, is having a great career in baseball at Siena Heights. So, I mean, so many kids have left our program and other programs at Airport and gone on to do cool things. That's the coolest part, too, is to watch them take the next step, whether they're, going and playing, whether they're starting a family, taking new jobs. I'm on LinkedIn and I'm always looking where my kids are, like calling my kids the guys I coach, because they're taking jobs at places and growing up, and it's cool.
It is. It's awesome, man. I always tell my kids I mess with them, and it's the whole. I'm one of those. I'm more of an old school guy, so and I know which kids. You obviously, as coaches, you learn which kids to have certain attitudes and conversations with, right? Like, I'm press this button with this kid, but I'm very much like, my attitude towards my kids is very much like, I love you, but I need you to do this work and get your ass out of here. I need you to work hard, and I need you to go do something, man. I need you to go start a business, go to school, go on, play college football, but I need you to get your butt up out of Erie, Michigan, and go do something.
Be a productive member
go
of
do
society.
something. Yeah, get up out of here after high school and go do something good.
The hard part is you want them to come back because you want good people to live in your town.
That's also true. Yep.
I'm getting ready to build a house next to my dad, and I grew up next to my grandpa. And so, not that, my plan was always to live next door to my parents or my grandpa, but things worked out a certain way, and you lay roots down places, and I want my kids to grow up next to their grandparents,
right,
and down the road from their uncle. I brought my oldest son to his house before we came here to hang with his girls.
That's awesome.
So it's a cool place.
But you built a life.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
We were brought into
even though you didn't get yourself out of Carleton, you got yourself out and did something.
We got to go see some things and do some things. We both played college baseball and got to play in some cool places.
Definitely.
I played in San Diego, LA, and I mean, there's a lot of great stories from playing all over the place. But
seeing the kids benefit from that. Kids benefit from your experiences of playing college ball, or going here, or running a business, or being married, or whatever it is.
I've used that probably more than any tool that I've been able to is personal experience, to where, you see it often. When kids are having success when they are young, right? They have, whether it's kids or whether it's parents, the expectation becomes, all of a sudden, that this kid's a college kid, or he's going to do this, or he's going to play at this level. And from, playing at the Division I level, is that you're able to look at kids and say, it's not always what you think it is. Like, it is definitely something that if you want to do it, you should aspire to do it. But you shouldn't be defined on whether or not you're a Division I guy or a Division II guy or an NAIA guy. If you want to play, then play. If you don't want to play, it becomes a job. Like, when you get to that level and you have X amount of hours dedicated to it a week, and you have school on top of that, and just being young and thinking that you know what you're doing, and you don't yet at that point, being 18, right? And leave, especially if you leave home for the first time, like there's a lot of learning that can be done in those experiences. So a lot of what I have done with, whether it's, football kids or anything that I've coached, is a lot of times I try to at least share my experiences with them, as far as good and bad, right? Just be honest with kids and let them know, sometimes things are one way and sometimes they aren't. So
I love that. I had the coach at Romulus, shout out to Coach Searce, but Coach Searcy sat down one day, and I forget how we were getting into this conversation, but he said, we're, as humans, man, like, and it was, I think it was kind of getting on the subject of what we're talking about, but he said, we're a collection of our experiences. Like, as people, that's literally that's what we are in a nutshell. We are a collection of every experience we've had with every person, every situation. That's what you are. So to take from it is what you should do. You got to take from every experience you have. But as coaches, we should do it on even a more so level, right? Because these kids are looking to us. They are looking to you for answers. They want to know. And as much as, kids, I love kids. I know they're going to make mistakes. You still want them to know, hey, man, if you do this, there's a good chance that this is either going to go south or, maybe it goes north if we're talking about a good situation.
I'm
But
40 years old. I still make mistakes.
yeah, right, every day.
I mean, that's
Every
how
day.
it
You
goes.
you know what's the craziest part about being a parent? And
how long is this
well,
podcast?
the craziest part to me though is like I grew up thinking my parents had the answers, right? Thinking my parents were and my coaches, thinking my coaches had all the my coach must be the smartest dude in the world because I know it because he's the coach. So, and then you realize as you get older, you're like, man, my parents and coaches were trying every day just to figure it out.
They didn't
just
know
to get
either.
better, just to try. Like, yeah, they knew more than I did at 15, 18, whatever, but they really didn't know either. And they were still trying to figure it out.
This is right up his alley because there were, I think, 2 times during this football season that he told our old man, our dad, Tim Duffy Sr., who coaches in the program and coached us.
Shout out.
But that coach senior was no longer the smartest man in the room, which I would never get in the middle of because I'm the same way. If there's something I need, whether it's house related, job related, I need advice, I'm calling my dad, to this day. And now, again, everybody learns and everybody gets older, but you hit that on the head that you put them on such a high level and a pedestal.
Yep.
They were the best of the best, and they were. And I think that's
that was the biggest transition from assistant coach to head coach at any time was about 3-4 years into coaching when I realized that some kids at least were intimidated or afraid of me, where forever I was the young assistant guy that I got to put my arm around a kid after he got yelled at. Like,
Right.
You're good. Don't worry about it. You're good. Don't worry about him. He's just in a bad mood, whatever it is. And then I was the grumpy old guy, and like all my staff was the guys that they went to. So they would look at me and they'd be like you'd have your kids be like, oh, no, he's terrified of you. And I'm like, I'm not yelling at people. I guess it's just like they look at you in a position of authority and how you kind of just handle things. And I'm like, wow, I'm old. Like that is I went from
that it hit him right
there.
it
was
that was the moment.
It was like a ton of bricks where I'm like, I am officially like they look at me like I used to
You're
look
the
at
old
people
guy.
where I used to look at people like, well, hey, they know because they know. Like they look at me like that, and here I am going, well, I hope this works.
and
I'm still figuring
I'm pretty
it out.
positive it's going to work.
Right.
It might not.
the funniest thing about that is, and this isn't true in all cases, but like to the people that we realized that as we got older, maybe they didn't have all the answers. They still look at us as Little Red and Jim, this whole conversation started 15 minutes ago was this the best team ever at Airport? In my humble opinion, it was. And I would argue with other people. Now I've seen all sorts of good teams. I mean, I was there from the 98, 99, 2000 teams. I was in school and in the program during the 02, 03 teams, which were unbelievably successful and talented. Then there were teams sprinkled in there after that were great, and probably teams before my time that were awesome too in their own way. However, like I would tell people that the game has changed, and I always hear people say these kids couldn't play in the game 15 years ago. And
Yes, they could.
Yeah, I think they could. I think that 15 years ago, the game was played in a box. Everybody kind of ran versions of the wing T power. Everybody ran a 5-2, 4-4, 4-3. Not saying that it was any less football. It was just that it goes up and down. It's cyclical. At the time it was smash mouth. It was, the tougher team's going to win. And then at that time, same thing. Teams were riding out great. Highs and lows. Jefferson had it going when we were playing, and so I think that now you see a bigger variety of things, whether it's defensive looks, whether it's what offense people are running. I mean, we still see the T twice a year. You see spread a lot. Yeah, you see gun wing T what we did, and you see true spread in Grozil or Harper Woods so like I'm not saying that they were head over heels better than every team. I'm saying that this team matched up against other people, I think finds a way to compete with everybody that's been before us.
I'll say it not so humbly.
There you
Yeah,
go.
they are. And I say they. I
said
will.
as a former player,
Yeah,
too.
and I'll say this, people don't think I'm biased. I didn't say they're the most well coached team that we've ever had. I said that they were
That's
the best
true.
team we've ever had.
Yeah.
He's right that the game's changed, but I can't look at a single thing, whether sports, technology, education. I can't look at anything 20 years ago and said, you know what we have now is worse. Everything gets better because we learn more. Kids start earlier.
That's a great message.
They know more about nutrition. They know more about their bodies and how to, handle themselves when they're younger, as far as growing and becoming more athletic. Like, do I think that the great players that played when I played could play now? Yes, because they would have the same advantages, right? I think guys that were really good, no matter what era they played in, if they had the tools that they have now, would also be able to compete. But just like anything else, athletes today at the high school level are better than they were 20 years ago. And not only are you have your top 4 or 5, every team's broken into thirds, right? Like you have a third of guys these are the guys I depend on each and every week. And you have a third maybe on the other end of the spectrum that you say they're very important team wise. They're probably not going to contribute on Friday nights as much as some other guys, but whether it is camaraderie, whether it is leadership, whether it is being scout guys defensively, it is that middle third now that it used to be that middle third would swing. Like if that is a good third, we're going to be a good football team. Right. And if that third's not very good, maybe we're thin. But I think that middle third right now, if you were to measure the guys that were the middle third when I played to now, that's where your biggest gap is. Everybody always wants to compare Jordan and LeBron, right?
Yeah.
They don't want to compare, the middle, the guys that they play against, or the guys that they depend on, because that is that middle group of guys are so much better right now than they were at that time. It makes the game. And not only that, I think that as coaches, right, you had people that you would run the same system for 30 years. And if you are really good at that systems, that like there's plenty of guys that have run the T or run a double wing or run
you watch over
the
at
veer.
Riverview and different
they're awesome.
or the veer or whatever, that they've run it forever and they're going to run it forever and they're going to be successful because that is what they do. But everyone else has been forced to change because people are, whether coaches are players are getting better, schemes are getting better. Everything is just, there's more of it. It evolves.
I played on
resources would still be available for that's the one thing too, is like, dude, Huddle is like, come on, man. Huddle makes it easier to play. If your kids actually take advantage of Huddle, it makes football easier.
When I first started coaching, we still traded DVDs.
Coaches always tell me about that. See, I'm young enough in the game where I may not have had all the Huddle, stuff that it has now, but I had Huddle from day one. I've been lucky enough to say that I'm young enough to have. My first couple of years, and not only that, when I was young coaching at that time, I was the guy that went and traded them.
Yeah.
Where like you didn't mail them, right? Like you sent one of your guys to go
to get it. Yeah.
Swap at a gas station.
I've heard those stories a million times.
My first year coaching, first week, our varsity's opening up at Adrian, and it was, we had, trying to think, the year before we had lost to them in the playoffs. And the next year we're opening up with them on the road, and I'm excited. Like, let's go. And I get a phone call that week from our head coach. He's like, "Hey, I need you to go to Ida Flat Rock." I'm like, "For what?" He's like, "To film." I'm like, "Oh, I can't go to our game." I'm like, I'm engaged with our kids. Like, I want to be there. And then, but I was a lower level coach at the time, but I'm like, it was just absolutely, I'm there. So I'm filming Adrian or Ida Flat Rock, getting texts from my old man who was on the sideline at the varsity game, keeping me updated. So that was like, I think I did it 3 times that year that I went and filmed, and
other ways technology has actually helped us. All right, fellas, we got a couple questions left here. We'll make this one. We'll just get a couple quick thoughts. I feel pretty strongly one way about this. I'm not going to go on and on, but there's obviously the proposal in California. We like to touch on stuff football related or whatever sport we're talking about. So basically, for those listening who don't know, what they're proposing is basically no tackle football under 12 years old. Now, there's going to be two sides of this argument, right? There's going to be one side that says, CTE and concussions and this and that, got to stop it. And then there's the other side that's going to say, well, you're actually going to increase it, different things. And so how do you guys feel about the whole proposal?
I think that it is very much based on your resources, right? Like, I think that everybody expects football coaches to say, no, you can't. They have to be able to play tackle whenever, right? And when I say resources, I don't mean that you have proper equipment. I mean that you have proper people putting the time in coaching those young kids, because tackle football is no good if you at 8, if you don't teach it the right way, if they're not going to be safe and they're not going to be, one, they're either not going to enjoy the game and continue on with it, or two, they're not going to stay healthy enough to enjoy the game. And I think there's a lot of benefits to the skill work. Like, you have high school kids right now that travel the country playing 7-on-7 without pads. So as much as I want to, everybody wants to make it a masculinity thing, as far as if you play flag football, you're not as good as someone that plays tackle football. Well, I think there's things to be learned. And I think sometimes the size of a child depends on whether or not they're ready to do that. You have kids that the helmet weighs as much as they do, and you want,
that's real,
and part of it is too, you bend over backwards to make kids play tackle football by putting in, like, I didn't play tackle football. I will tell you, this is a real quick story. I played flag football until I was in 6th grade. I went to one day of CYO football, one day, and they did a weigh-in, and they said, you can't touch the ball. And my dad said, we're going to go play flag football.
Yeah, they got the rules.
Right. And I get it, right? They don't want somebody that was really,
right,
that was larger for that. I wasn't like huge, but I was a big kid. Yeah. They didn't want them running kids, in a certain way. Well, that wasn't going to be for me. He's like, he knew I was going to be an athlete that was going to have the ball. And he goes, well, you're not going to go there and play tackle and not, like the position tackle, not tackle football. He goes, because that's just not probably where you're going to end up. Right. So I think there's benefits to both. I'm not a fan of outlawing anything. Like, I'm just not, as far as,
that's a good message.
I think that if you have a community that has proper facilities, it has proper people in positions to be able to coach and teach kids to safely do it, that at any time they should be able to play tackle football, as long as the parents are okay with it and as long as they're taught appropriately.
That's an awesome message.
But I just don't like people. I don't want to say I have a problem with authority. I do not. I just don't like being told that, like, you can't do something,
especially when it's something that's, ultimately, my point has always been, this is, I love your perspective, though. Brought a new one to my mind. My perspective has always been, this is the parents' decision. So stop telling parents what to do. I'm not a fan of that. Like, to me, I'm a fan of letting business owners decide what's right for their business, letting parents decide what's right for their kids. I'm a fan of that, right? So to me, that was, but that's a great perspective, though. Check your resources and do it situationally and figure it out from there.
You have a lot of communities that, like, we started a youth program 2 years ago. We didn't have it. So if you'd have told me, hey, you got, 100 kids playing flag football, I would say, that's better than not playing football at all.
Right. And that's better than having to hurry up and try to put a program together with a bunch of different, if you can, because some places can't afford to do that either. Like,
you're exactly
you can't,
right.
Well, we want a youth program, but can we really go buy 50 shoulder pads and 50 helmets? And like, I know the common listener doesn't know, we know what helmets cost.
Yeah.
And shoulder pads and stuff.
And I just saw, being around the junior jets, literally the first meeting of, we have $0, $100. Somebody donated $100 to get us started. We have this many kids signed up. We got to go make this money and get kids properly equipped.
That's crazy. It was to start it from the ground.
And I didn't play tackle till 7th grade, and was a bad experience in 7th grade because I wasn't physically ready. There were kids that were better. So I wish I would have started at least a couple years earlier playing tackle. So I, as a former athletic director, I see all sides. I try to sit back, and the one thing I would say is, like you guys said, not letting a parent make the decision that they feel is best for their kid. And kids will tell you if they don't want to play. I'm a firm believer, and I
fast.
begged my dad at
Especially
times.
football.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think that's huge. But I also think that the things that I've seen high school kids that I learned myself, but also the youth kids, the things that football does for you as a human being and the characteristics in which you can get by being a part of that program to, again, they're going to play flag. I would have a hard time seeing these programs, disperse because
Right.
people are leaving the state or going elsewhere to play and do other things when the game is so good for kids. It is such a great game.
It is, and it'll hurt California in general, just the athletics. Like, man, you talk about, like, you won't notice it next year or the year after, but in 5, 6, 7 years, you start to all these quarterbacks and running backs that end up going to here and here. You'll start to be like, man, where are these guys at? Well, I agree with him on the whole resource thing. Don't put kids out there that shouldn't. If flag is the way you should go right now because your school, your district, whatever, don't have the resources, by all means, do what you need to do because, like you said, football is a great sport. Stay involved in it however the hell you can if you're interested in playing.
And at the youth level, watching Derek and Justin, the guys who have led the Junior Jets, coaches, get people trained, let them get on Glazier, watch film, because he's right. If you do it, just throwing anybody out there to run a group of kids and hey, here's a whistle. It's not that
Oklahoma
it's
drills.
not that type of sport.
Then you get that.
What did they say? Oklahoma drills made more basketball players than any other.
So we got a game on tonight, fellas, here in about an hour.
Yep.
This is
Green Bay.
Are you kidding me?
48-16.
Called that.
We just got a score update for the listeners out there.
So when the Lions win tonight, round 2 will be at home too. Now
that would be it will absolutely be. That would be beautiful. Lions go get it. So my question about the Lions was just real basic. Do they get it done tonight? And do they realistically have a chance to win the whole thing?
So I have been a Lions fan since I was a kid and always for some reason think they're going to win, even though I've been consistently let down. So I'm absolutely tonight. Yes, they're going to win because there's been years we've been, 6-11 for all those years or 6-10 before they changed it to.
But I just learned as a Michigan fan, never stop hoping because eventually it breaks. Eventually it happens.
I will tell you that I think that they have competed in games with teams that because any given Sunday for a reason, if they were to, San Fran looks real good. And I don't think that the Eagles by any means are like all of a sudden they became not good like over a couple of weeks. Yeah. I mean, I know Matt Patricia is involved with them now, which it can't be a coincidence that it started at that point. But, I think that they can beat anybody left. Will they? I don't know. They're going to win tonight, though.
You do think they get it done tonight?
So I called it the other day, and if I'm wrong, I'm probably wrong. But I said the other day that they were going to win tonight. And then I actually had them going to Dallas in round 2, but I said the Eagles were going to upset the 49ers and we were going to host an NFC championship game and that it was going to be the coolest atmosphere in Detroit in forever. So now we need Green Bay to upset San Francisco.
Yeah.
Because that's who they're going to go there now.
Man. Green Bay's playing good football.
You never know in the playoffs.
I'm going to say Motor City Dan Campbell said something last week that stuck with me as a coach and as a guy who just loves the Lions, man. He said, we've been hardened by adversity. Like, I think that we have made a lot of mistakes in games throughout the course of the year that you look and say, man, we're not there yet. I think if we play the brand of football and clean up mistakes, I think we have a shot of making a cool little run here. And I'm also ready to be hurt again. So yeah, I'm going Lions by 1 million.
Lions by 1 million. I love it, man. Oh yeah. For those who are tuning in, 8:15 Lions Rams. Make sure you guys go watch it on Peacock. Matt Stafford making his return back to Detroit. Don't cheer that man if you're at the stadium. Listen,
absolutely not.
He said that y'all were not good enough in Detroit at the Lions. And he wanted out to go win a ring. Boo his ass when he walks in. I'm so serious. So before we get out of here, we do want to give out our athletes of the week. So check this out. George Rote, Airport Bowling, 278, 8 consecutive strikes. And that actually snapped New Boston Huron's 80-match winning streak. So, like, I was blown away when I read that by the fact that, like, New Boston Huron won 80 freaking bowling matches in a row. And then 8 consecutive strikes. Like, for a high school kid, man, that is unreal.
That's really good.
Dude, that's what I'm saying. Shout
With
out
the
to
bumpers.
George, because that's incredible. Sophia Bustle, Monroe girls basketball. We had her sister live on the show early back in one of our first few episodes. She had 18 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 steals. They snapped a losing streak, came up with a big win. And then our honorable mentions this week, we had Xavier Wise. That's my guy. Shout out over at Erie Mason. He had 20 points. Mason's been off to a slower start in basketball compared to our standard, and he came up with 20 in a big win. So shout out to you, because I know you watch Xavier. Big win for you guys. Olivia Gratz, Airport girls basketball. She had 22 points and 14, and that was 2 league wins over Milan and SMCC. So 2
That's
league
awesome.
wins. Incredibly impressive. And then, you know, to score for me, to score 20 plus in a high school basketball game, girls, boys, I don't care. Like, that's pretty damn good. So, and
She's
then
only a
our
sophomore too.
she's
Yeah.
only a sophomore.
Yeah,
Shout out.
yeah.
So she's got a couple years ahead of her then. And then the last honorable mention, Madeline Hussein from Flat Rock girls basketball. She had 29 points and 7 rebounds in a win over New Boston Huron. Again, 29.7 rebounds is
That's
incredible
awesome.
for a high school game. Fellas, appreciate you guys coming on. This has been awesome.
I got one thing before I go, because I would not be able to come here without doing it. You give shout outs all day. Make sure you give one to Josh Brewer.
Yeah, JB.
Yeah, shout out.
So you talk about staffs and guys that make impressions and make just contributions to football programs. Josh has been with me since my second year,
Love it.
2018, and I know he's up in here all the time.
All the time.
I would be remiss if I came up here and did not mention him. So make sure that he better be watching this right now. So
Yeah,
Coach
love it.
Brewer.
If not, make sure you message him and tell him to watch.
Yeah, I was gonna say
yeah,
we missed you, bud.
Shout out for sure. Every time I've met him a few times up here, and every time I've ran into
he's
him,
probably guaranteeing wins or something.
everything. It's
he-
just been football.
first year,
I
he's
love
like-
it because I'm like, oh, dude, we can talk football. I
His
love
first
it.
year, he comes in the first day. He's like, "We're going 9-0." I was like, "Let me just pump the brakes for a minute." And then this year he was talking the newspaper all the time, and I'm like, I had to like quote check him before. I said he didn't guarantee anything, did he? And he's like, "No, he was good." He grew too, right? He is
Right.
young
Absolutely.
coach, was very
Love it.
confident, and then got better.
Amazing human being, amazing staff over there, no doubt. You can find Kennedy Health and Wellness on Facebook and Instagram, or KennedyHealthWellness.com. Make sure you go follow my friends here at Brain Jerk on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. If you want to catch this show every Sunday, or Pillar Talk on Wednesday, or any of the other content, squares, circles, shenanigans, all that, you got to go to their YouTube or their Facebook. It'll be live on there. Make sure you check them out. Or on X, formerly Twitter. Sorry, Elon, I'm still calling it Twitter. But on January 21st, so next week, we welcome Missy Mitchell Macbeth. She's a strength and conditioning coach at Safe Iron Training. She's super highly regarded in the volleyball sports world. So I'm excited to have her on. Again, thank you guys. This was a great episode, and
Thank you.
We'll see you guys next week.
Yep. Thank you.